Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Previously, we managed to get that stinky butt-faced Eggert Benedict to the stand. Okay, well, he's not stinky. He's the breath mint man. He looks like how breath mints taste, I said. Anyway, his real name is Ashley Graydon, and he works as a communications receiver at the station? I don't know the word for what he is. Important communications man. And it just so happens that some very sensitive info was leaked to certain parties, and it's a huge scandal in the news, so that has me going, Anyway, we have a new testimony to cross-examine, so let's get right to that. There's a note on the disc saying, "For McGilded," but the item belongs to me.
Hold it!
Would you care to explain how this belongs to you? As you will observe, a communications officer such as myself commands a fine salary. You are certainly exquisitely dressed, sir. So you see, I have little need to make use of the services provided by the pawnbrokery trade. However, I did once find myself in difficulties, as having misplaced my purse whilst on an errand, which is why I pawned my fine black overcoat to the broker in question. You claimed that was your overcoat. Obviously, and in my haste I clean forgot that the music box disc was in its pocket. And yet there is a note on it that reads, "For McGilded." I'm a collector Oh, sorry. Well, my throat just did something really weird. Ugh. I'm a collector of rare and unusual music box music. I first met Mr. McGilded at a gentleman's club in the city and was interested to discover that he shared my penchant in that area. So the disc in question? It's a pre-production sample. I promised to let Mr. McGilded hear it. But then you forgot that it was in the pocket of the overcoat you were forced to pawn. Yes, exactly. But it took you 2 months to remember? Gina didn't mention any of that in her testimony 2 months ago, did she? No, because McGilded had threatened her to keep her mouth shut. Which means that if we dig too deeply here, it's going to expose Gina's perjury. Oh. Oh dear, this is complicated, isn't it? Let's leave it alone for the time being. The redemption ticket was stolen from me by the accused, that filthy gutterling, on the day in question.
Hold it!
So you're saying that Miss Lestrade lifted the ticket from your pocket or bag? That's right, despite being mindful of danger when walking in the insalubrious areas her kind frequent.
Objection!
Miss Lestrade did no such thing. Well, of course you would take that stance, but the girl is a regular offender. You came to the pawnbrokery that day prepared with all the information you needed to identify the defendant. You were looking for her. That's what brought you to Windibanks. To get your hands on Mr. McGilded's disc.
Objection!
My learned friend is a veritable font of nonsense. Nonsense? I concur with the prosecution. Ow. Counsel, you will refrain from conjecturing in this way. Is that clear? Yes, my lord. Then I will continue with my testimony for what possible use it can be. I proceeded at once to the shop in order to explain my situation and redeem my article.
Hold it!
Had you ever been to Windibanks before? only once for the purposes of pawning something, but like many, I enjoy browsing in such establishments. So when you noticed that the pickpocket had taken your ticket, you chased after her, is that correct? Yes, that's right. I didn't notice at first, of course, such as the art of the pick purse. But when I did, I headed to the pawnbrokery at once, in order to reclaim my coat before the thief could. I was merely trying to recover what was rightfully mine in the first place. He can say what he likes because he knows we have no evidence to contradict him on this. If only that coat was evidence, we could point out the ripped seam in the shoulder. In the end, of course, the disc was taken by the police.
Hold it!
Yes, it was taken by Inspector Gregson here, wasn't it? That's right. This was the very man. Apparently the police are collecting anything that has a connection to Mr.
right?
McGilded as evidence. Oh?
Excuse me!
Is something wrong, Inspector? What do you mean? The last remark Mr. Graydon made in his testimony seemed to trouble you in some way. No, it didn't. It's nothing. Leave it alone. Let me ask you this, Inspector. Why is Scotland Yard gathering Mr. McGilded's possessions? I can't tell you something like that, Sunshine. What is it, Inspector? Investigative secrets? Yes, exactly. You should know all about that. Magnus McGilded, who died so unexpectedly after his trial 2 months ago. A man renowned throughout the capital for his great contributions to public life. Yet he had a dark side, too. Where are you going with this, Van Zeeks? I suppose the police are dealing with the aftermath of his nefarious activities, are they? That's enough. Coppers like me have duties to carry out that we're not at liberty to talk about. That's all you need to know. Duties conferred by Lord Strongheart, I presume. The Lord Chief Justice appears to have great faith in you, Inspector. The bottom line is, if you want to get more out of me, you're gonna need Lord Strongheart's paw print first. He's a furry? What's all this about? It's like there's something going on between Gregson and Lord Van Zeeks here. Well, it would appear that the Inspector has revealed all he is at liberty to reveal. Mr. Graydon, let us return to your testimony. Gladly, my lord. I'm not a furry, but sometimes I think that if I were, I'd probably be a sheep. That sounds nice. Yeah. I like wearing really warm coats. Sometimes I think it's sheep's wool. What are we talking about? Anyway. In other words, I had absolutely no reason to break into the shop later that same night.
Hold it!
But perhaps you'd seen something of value among the forfeited items. No, not at all. Oh. A valuer was brought in by the police to assess everything in the shop. Without exception, every article on the shelves was common or garden bric-a-brac. Bric-a-brac is such a great term. In that case, it's clear that you broke into the shop later that day in order to recover Mr. McGilded's disc. Have you not been listening, man? Even if I had wanted to recover the disc, you may recall that it had been seized by the police that afternoon. It was no more in the shop that night than I. As I keep saying, I simply had no reason to break in. So there was nothing of McGilded's left in the shop that night. Nothing this man might have been after. I wonder if that's really true.
Runo, if you have some evidence, then let him have it. I'm dying to see that irritatingly assured expression of his crumble.
McGilded slipped the disc into his coat pocket and had it deposited at Windibank's. Then, when he realized he was going to be arrested on suspicion of the omnibus murder, he threatened Gina and forced her to take the redemption ticket.
There's no doubt about it. That witness is lying through his pearly white teeth.
The police were obviously after anything left behind by McGilded as well. That's why Inspector Gregson ended up taking the disc into custody that day.
But Gregsy's being very strange about all this.
There must be a reason for that, I'm sure. I just don't know what it is. For now, I need to focus on exposing the fact that Mr. Graydon is lying in his testimony. Something else of McGilded's that was in the shop. I definitely feel like this is the line we need to contradict. Something that Graydon knew the police would find and take. Where did we get this ticket for the small box? I think this might be it. The small box has not been talked about yet. It might be time to bring that up. Let's see. Ah, Susato's notes. Anything here? No, I don't think so. Something of McGilded's. Well, we haven't used this box ticket yet. I think it's this. The problem is I completely forget the context of the box. What was it? When was the box? So it was deposited the 13th of February, and the coat, which was the date of the omnibus murder, was the 15th. Was it McGilded personally deposited this? Oh, wait, I can read this to get... Oh, yeah, that's right. Mr. Windibank appears to have used the back of his photograph to write out a redemption ticket. He's written it very neatly, but still, perhaps he ran out of paper, so he had to use anything he had to hand. It's hard to know what's the front and what's the reverse side now. Oh. Well, crap. One small box. Wait, really? Why? What could I possibly gain out of looking at these as a stereoscope again? Whoever thought of this in the first place must have spent a long time staring. Screw it. I'm following my gut.
Objection!
Oh. This disc was deposited at Windibank's on Magnus McGilded's instructions. You knew that, and you went there with the intention of obtaining it for yourself.
Objection!
Conjecture again. And in any case, the disc was taken into custody by the police that afternoon. The witness had no reason to visit the pawnbrokery again that night.
Objection!
Sorry, my learned friend, but that's not true. What? Mr. McGilded had another article in pawn at Windibank's, as this second pawnbroker's ticket proves. He doesn't like that. There were 2 articles belonging to Mr. McGilded in Windibank's pawnbrokery, and the reason you broke into the shop that night was to recover the second one. Together with your 2 accomplices, the Skulkin brothers. Ugh. This is the second ticket, is it? What had the man deposited? The article description reads, 1 small box. A rather vague description, it seems to me. Are you suggesting that I broke into the pawnbrokery with these clowns in order to steal some trinket box? I believe there are adequate grounds to suspect that you did. This is absurd. Why on earth would I do such a thing? Once the article had been forfeited, I could simply walk into the shop and purchase it. There would be absolutely no need for me to resort to theft. That's a good point. Indeed. The witness makes a solid argument.
So that means that for some reason, this Graydon fellow needed the small box that very night, does it?
Objection!
It's time to put an end to this nonsense, my lord. Could you be a little less cryptic, Lord Van Zieks? I do hate to ruin my learned friend's argument, but the truth is quite incontrovertible. On the night in question, no small box was taken from Windibank's pawnbrokery. And rest assured the prosecution can prove it. What? Good gracious! Inspector, show the photographic prints to the court, if you please. Yes, sir. What prints? These prints were taken from one of the detective's security cameras.
Ah, Hurley's red-handed recorders again.
As previously explained, using this plan of the shop layout. The victim's establishment was furnished with automatic cameras in 2 locations. One was set to capture the counter where Mr. Windibank received his customers, and the other was set to capture the shelves on which articles were placed for sale once forfeited. According to the information on this ticket, McGilded's small box had been forfeited already, 2 days before the incident at 9 p.m. on 13th of April to be precise, which means it would have been on the shelves of forfeited items in the shop front. Now, what I have here is a print taken by one of the cameras about 2 hours before the incident. That's at 11 p.m. on the 15th of April. The victim certainly had a very full shop, it would appear. And then we have another print. This one was taken about 2 hours after the incident. I see. So we have 2 pictures to compare. Alright. Since I can't cross my eyes, I need to do a comparison. Oh. I already see it. That little brown tin to the right of the horse's head, it's moved. In the after picture, it's moved over to the right again. Huh. Though I must say that placing them side by side leaves me cold. Dear me, that's starting to make my head ache. Obviously, at Scotland Yard, we considered theft as one possible motive in this case.
We explored the possibility that something had been taken in addition to the victim's life.
So your men have already compared these two prints thoroughly, Inspector?
Yes, sir. We counted every single item in each of these two photographic prints. And the Yard's conclusion is that exactly the same number are present in both. In other words, nothing was taken from the pawnbrokery on the night in question. And my learned friend's assertions is nothing more than a hopeful fantasy. Arg! I don't believe it. If I could have just shown that he'd stolen McGilded's pawned box, I might have been able to break him down at last. You know what, Runo? I've been thinking. I wonder if these two photographs really are exactly the same. What?
So, counsel, in the light of the evidence put forward by the prosecution, what is your position? It seems that, in fact, on the night in question, nothing was stolen from the victim's establishment. Do you accept the prosecution's assertion?
I don't know. Could there be some hidden discrepancy in these two photographic prints somewhere? Yeah, I'd like to point it out. A container was moved. Therefore, something that was inside the container may very well be taken. I wasn't sure at first, but there is a clear discrepancy between these two prints. What?
You must identify the location in question for the court, counsel. Indicate the precise location of the discrepancy of which you speak.
Boop.
Take that!
Granted, these two prints are almost identical. However, there is one minor discrepancy between them. What? When you view the two pictures stereoscopically, a single area stands out as being different. The location of this small box. Oh, so the box we saw in the back room was not, in fact, the... Okay. Let me... Wait. Unbelievable.
By Jove, you're right. How extraordinary.
What this tells us is very simple. Mr. McGilded's small box was indeed not stolen from Windibanks on the night in question. However, there can be no doubt that somebody picked up this particular box and then returned it to its place on the shelves.
Are you suggesting that the small box originally deposited by Mr. McGilded is, in fact...
Yes, the very same small box I just identified in those photographic prints.
Objection!
Mindless guesswork. What if it was? So a box was moved on the shelf. Nothing was stolen. Which means, quite simply, that nothing has changed. That may be true, but... Alright, McGilded's box wasn't stolen then. But doesn't the fact that it was moved like that change things? It changes everything. I believe this changes everything about the case. How can that possibly be? The crucial point is the fact that what was moved was a small box. In other words, we have to consider what might have been inside that box. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we need to examine that box as soon as possible. A vital piece of evidence is sitting on the shelves at Windibanks as we speak.
Objection!
That won't be necessary. Some little box belonging to a man who died 2 months ago can't possibly be relevant to this trial.
The court does not uphold your objection, Lord Van Zieks. Bailiff, arrange for an officer to go to Baker Street at once. Obtain the small box in question and bring it back here for further examination.
Thank you, Judge.
We should have a report within half an hour. I think perhaps we should recess for a short while until the evidence is brought forth.
To be hoodwinked by such a farce. Disappointing.
I beg your pardon, Lord Van Zieks.
This is nothing but a smokescreen, a Nipponese specialty, it would seem. What are you trying to say? My learned friend has persisted with the same line of reasoning from the very beginning, that this witness's intent was to steal an article belonging to Mr. McGilded from the pawnbrokery. Yet common sense tells us that none of the articles have value enough to be worth stealing in the first place. Exactly. It would be beyond absurd to break into a place for the purpose of stealing such commonplace property. If your lordship recalls, Mr. McGilded perished 2 months ago, immediately after the conclusion of his trial. A trial in which he was found not guilty. A trial in which it was established he was the upstanding member of society his reputation implied, in fact. So I propose a toast to my learned friend and his most insightful defense. The articles this upstanding member of society pawned were entirely ordinary. A black overcoat that just happened to have a music box disc in one of its pockets, and a small box. I assure you, I wouldn't accept even if the man tried to make a gift of such things to me. You know, that does make rather a lot of sense. It's not as if it was gold or jewels, is it? Though goodness knows Mr. McGilded was rich enough.
But you can't deposit cash at pawnbrokery. The prosecution's argument is undeniably compelling.
It is incumbent on the defense now to bolster its argument. To explain what possible significance these commonplace articles pawned by this fine citizen could have.
Well, counsel, is your argument in fact demonstrable? Are you able to show proof that the disc or the box are in any tangible way related to this case?
Well, What's the matter, Runo? We know that they're related, don't we? They're both vital pieces of evidence. Yes, of course. You and I both know that. We know McGilded's true character, and we know the disc is significant, even if we don't know why. But if we explain all that to the court at this point, we'll have to acknowledge that McGilded's acquittal 2 months ago was a mistake. That the defense's argument was flawed, based on false information. Oh no! And that would mean admitting that Gina committed perjury. But, Ginny... Could it be that Van Zieks knows? Is that why he's doing this now? Because he anticipated everything? But maybe... This could be a great opportunity for us. Sorry? What do you mean, Iris? Well, what is it that you always say, Runo? sooner or later the truth comes out, every time. Alright. The exact significance of the things that McGilda deposited with Mr. Windibank is something that only Gina can explain to the court. But if I put her on the stand to testify about that, it could critically damage our chances of winning this case. What's the right thing to do here? Well, I always say, if you want to get away with something huge, you gotta take a small hit. My lord, the defense would like to make a proposal.
Oh, what proposal, counsel?
While the court awaits the arrival of Mr. McGilded's small box, I would like to call the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, to the witness stand.
The defendant? To what end?
It's to do with the various articles deposited at Windibank's by Mr. McGilded, my lord. Miss Lestrade has information relating to them. I believe it would be beneficial for the court to hear what she has to say. It will prove the significance of the articles in question once and for all. Well, well, things are becoming interesting. I presume you've considered the implications of the testimony you're proposing. In particular, the impact it will have on the accused's standing, and indeed your own.
I have. Lord Van Zeeks, would you care to explain that last remark?
The prosecution accepts the defense's proposal. I move to interrupt the cross-examination of the current witness and hear from the accused herself.
Very well, if you have no objection. So the court will now hear the testimony of the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade. You witnesses currently in the stand may step down until further notice.
Then I shall bid you good day. Wait. You, sir, shall remain in the stand while Miss Lestrade testifies. As you wish. All right then, Gina. It's time. I know this will be hard, but please, put your faith in me here. Good luck, Runo. The articles that Mr. McGilded had deposited in Windibank's pawnbrokery are intimately related with the omnibus case, the trial of which was heard in this courtroom 2 months ago.
Yes, and I remember this young lady being brought before me in that trial as well.
That's right, my lord. Her testimony helped to establish the innocence of the defendant, Mr. McGilded. The omnibus case was intriguing, to say the least. And now here we all are again, the same players in that trial facing each other once more. A twist of fate, perhaps, my Nipponese friend. Allow me to recap the events of 2 months ago. An old brickmaker was stabbed to death in an omnibus running along London's winter streets. Apart from the victim, there was only one other person in the carriage, Mr. McGilded. Naturally, he was the prime suspect for the murder. But as the trial progressed, another possibility emerged. That the murder in fact took place above the defendant's head on the roof deck, with the body then being dropped through the skylight into the carriage below. It was Miss Lestrade whose testimony brought that possibility to light. At the time of the incident, Miss Lestrade was concealed under a seat in the carriage, hoping to pick the pockets of unsuspecting passengers. Then, immediately after the trial, having been acquitted of the murder, Mr. McGilded died in this very courtroom in the most extraordinary of circumstances. A mystery that remains unsolved even now, 2 months later. As indeed does the omnibus murder itself. Be that as it may, I recall neither the disc nor this small box being mentioned in the course of these proceedings. Miss Lestrade, would you tell the court now, please? What really happened in the omnibus 2 months ago, I mean? I don't know what you mean. I already said all of what I know. And what about everything you told us yesterday from inside your prison cell? Please, Miss Lestrade, this is extremely important. But... Remember, little girl, if it transpires that you willfully withheld information in the trial 2 months ago, the Home Office will seek to prosecute you for perjury. And naturally, you will lose all credibility as a witness. Although, let's face facts. You have little credibility to lose. Ginny, don't listen to him. Please, you have to trust Runo now. Iris? We're on your side. Alright then. I'll talk. It's the right choice, Gina. Well, it would seem that my learned friend is hell-bent on bringing the entire courtroom down about his ears. So be it. I must confess that I'm struggling to understand what on earth is happening here. However, it would appear that Mr. McGilded's pawned articles and that extraordinary case of the omnibus harbor secrets of which we have been hitherto unaware. So, Miss Lestrade, you will now give your testimony before the court about the events of 2 months ago. You will reveal the truth, a commodity sorely lacking in your original statements. This is it, then. Everything's going to come out. Like Van Zeek said, this could bring the whole courtroom down about my ears, but as a lawyer, I'm prepared to take that risk. I am too. This is gonna be really interesting. Wow. Truth is that Brickmaker Cove was in the cabin of the omnibus the whole time. When the Irishman dragged me out from under the seat, I saw that disc on the floor. All of a sudden, I heard a scream from over me head, and that pair on the roof deck went off to call the slops. That's when McGilded slipped the driver some tin to do a run to the pawn shop roundabout. He threatened me not to snitch, not to say nothing to no one about what I'd seen or heard.
Good grief, this is outrageous. What you've just told the court bears almost no resemblance to your testimony 2 months ago.
As you say, my lord.
Then there's every chance I may have adjudicated an error in McGilded's trial. It sounds very much to me as if the man deliberately deceived this court in an effort to cover up the most wicked of schemes.
Without doubt, your lordship is correct. A great injustice was done in this courtroom 2 months ago. The actions of the accused in that trial, of this witness, and of my learned friend are entirely inexcusable. I don't believe it. The whole trial was a farce, it was all lies. That McGilded fellow was rotten to the core. Don't forget that lawyer from the east, they were all in it on it together. You're wrong, the lot of ya. Mr. Naruhodo, the lawyer there, he didn't know nothing about it.
Humbug.
I don't think so. And are we really expected to believe that? He really stitched everyone up, didn't he? What an operation to get the man off scot-free. Unforgivable. Stop. The lies have to stop. Stop. Yes, the defense made a terrible error of judgment. I intend to take full responsibility and suffer whatever consequences are deemed appropriate. However, it's imperative that the court allows the witness to elaborate on her testimony, because the true significance of McGilda's Pond articles must be brought to light. Very well, my learned student friend. Given the depths of calamity you have just plunged yourself into, this may well be worth hearing.
Words fail me. This situation is utterly deplorable. Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes, my lord.
I will decide upon your fate following the conclusion of this trial.
Of course, my lord. Blimey, Mr. Naruhodo.
Now, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination.
Yeah, it's Boy, I've seen what happened to Phoenix Wright for less than something like this. Wait, whoops. Truth is that Brickmaker Cove was in the cabin of the omnibus the whole time.
Hold it!
And you were hiding in the cabin at the time as well, weren't you, Miss Lestrade? If I remember rightly, in the storage compartment underneath one of the seats. Yeah, that's right. It's pitch black under there, so you can't see nothing at all.
Now, in your testimony 2 months ago, I feel certain that you claim Mr. McGilded was the sole passenger, did you not?
False testimony, my lord. That's what he told me I had to say. But it's important that you tell us the truth now. Were Mr. McGilded and the victim acquaintances? I don't know. But I did hear him talking a lot. What were they talking about? Well, I couldn't hear too well, but if I had to say, I think it was about money or something. They kept talking about buying and not buying.
Perhaps business dealings of some kind.
Well, anyway, they got louder and louder. It started to sound like a proper fight. I was pretty scared by then. I hardly dared to breathe. And then, all of a sudden, I heard a noise like someone keeling over on the floor. It was bloomin' loud and all.
And I believe you let out an involuntary scream.
Yeah. That's what gave me away. When the Irishman dragged me out from under the seat, I saw that disc on the floor.
Hold it!
Was the disc you saw this disc? Yeah, I reckon it probably was. It was right next to the cove lying on the floor. I wonder if Mason was the owner of that disc. And McGilded killed him for it, tried to buy it from him, and then it failed, but...
Could this disc have belonged to the victim, perhaps?
I don't know, but McGilded picked it up pretty smartish. And then he sat the cove with a knife in his belly up on the seat. What did he say to you at that time? He told me not to say a word about what I'd seen or heard to no one. About the disc and all. I was dead scared the way he was looking at me. I thought if I didn't go along with it, I'd get stuck with that knife too. Then he started asking me a load of questions. Like what my name was and where I lived and that. He asked me about being a diver too. But after a while, what had happened in the carriage was noticed. Yeah, that's right. First there was a kind of rapping noise. All of a sudden, I heard a scream from over my head, and that pair on the roof deck went off to call the slops.
Hold it!
I can't help but notice that, Ashley has his back turned through all this. It's weird. There were 2 gentlemen occupying the seats on the roof deck, I believe. That's right. Oh! Oh, that, he doesn't, oh, that, oh, what? Excuse me. I'm kind of tempted to call them out right now and go, what are you whispering about? But, huh. They must have looked down through the skylight and noticed the cove with a knife in his guts. When they screamed, the driver pulled up the horses and McGilded got me out of sight.
Out of sight? Where?
Back under the seat where I started off. Once the carriage came to an halt, the 2 coves from the roof ran off to fetch the slops. If they immediately left to fetch the police, it would appear they were entirely unrelated to the incident. So that left McGilded, the driver, and you still at the scene. Yeah, only the driver didn't know I was there because I was under the seat. I heard the cabin door open and a voice from outside.
The driver, yes. He also testified in the trial, I believe. A fellow who went by the name of Beppo, if memory serves.
What did McGilded and the driver say to each other? I don't know what happened and stuff like that, mainly. That's when McGilded slipped the driver some tin to do a run to the pawn shop roundabout.
Hold it!
That pawn shop obviously being Windibank's on Baker Street.
Just a moment, counsel. Do you mean to tell me that the driver gave false testimony in that trial as well?
Perhaps the excursion to the pawnbrokery slipped his mind when he was in the stand.
Indeed, Lord Van Zeeks.
McGilded took off his coat and gave it to the driver. He folded it up all careful-like before handing it over. When I saw him do that, I remember thinking, that coat and what's in it has got to be worth a few bob. Yes, Gina was sure the disc must be worth more than Mr. Windibank was suggesting, wasn't she? I remember her quibbling with him over the price that afternoon at the pawnbrokery. The driver looked pretty happy when McGilded flashed some brass in his face. He went up, running off at a lick. Then the bog trotter called to me and told me to come out from the drag's cabin. He threatened me not to snitch, not to say nothing to no one about what I'd seen or heard.
Hold it!
Threaten you how exactly? Told me I'd only be able to Scarborough if I did exactly what he said. Which included giving false testimony in court 2 months ago. Yeah, that's it. Then there was one other thing he said. Which was... He told me I'd have to hang on to the ticket from the pawn shop and make sure not to lose it.
The ticket? Well, I never.
Said that if he didn't show up to get the ticket off me before 2 months passed, I had to go to the pawn shop and pay the money to keep it in luck, to stop it being forfeited. He left me with some brass to pay for it.
But really, why on earth would Mr. McGilded have done such a thing? Depositing his overcoat with a pawnbroker before the arrival of the police? It makes no sense at all.
There would seem to be only one logical explanation, my lord. What McGilded had the driver deposit at Windibank's was something he didn't want the police to see. Something very important that he needed to hide at all costs. Anyway, after that he let me go, so I legged it before the coppers showed up. Well done, Gina. It can't have been easy to tell the truth like that.
Ginny's really put her faith in you, Runo.
Yes, and to thank her, she'll have to face the charge of perjury once this trial is over. So I need to use the time we have now to get as much information out of her as possible.
It's time to really go for it. Press her on every statement.
I suppose I should.
Oh, and another thing.
What's that?
Take a look at those two. Isn't it strange that they've been whispering to each other the entire time?
Yes, that is strange. Looks like they're having a secret discussion about something. I'm not sure I'm completely comfortable with that. I wonder if there's anything I can do about it. Well, we certainly pressed everything, so...
Hold it!
I think I can pretty much call them out at any time. What the hell's going on?
Excuse me!
Is there something you'd like to share with the Court Inspector Gregson and Mr. Graydon? Inspector! Mr. Graydon!
What? Blimey, are you trying to give me a heart attack?
You have been whispering to each other for quite some time now. Tell us, what is the discussion about?
Discussion? With this fella? Pull the other one, sunshine. You think I've got anything to talk about with a shady gent like this?
And I have nothing to say to this uncouth detective after he deprived me of that disc that was rightfully mine. But they've clearly been talking the entire time I've been cross-examining Gina. It's as if they've been negotiating. Thank you, Miss Lestrade. Thank you, Counsel. I've heard enough. I believe we now have a reasonable understanding of what actually transpired in the omnibus. It would appear on that night 2 months ago, a negotiation was taking place on the omnibus. A negotiation concerning this disc. However, matters did not run smoothly. When the parties involved began to quarrel over price, McGilda took what he wanted by force, at the expense of the other man's life. Which proves my point. The disc is clearly extremely valuable in some way, although I don't understand why as yet. And 2 days ago, precisely 2 months after the omnibus incident, McGilda's coat and its contents were due to be forfeited.
I didn't know what I should do with the ticket. I mean, the cove died right after his trial. I knew that.
So you decided you would try to claim the articles as your own.
Well, why not, eh? They're only going to be forfeited. Why shouldn't I have got them? Anyway, you can't blame me for thinking about it. Thinking ain't no crime.
Miss Lestrade, it would appear Mr. McGilded was prepared to kill in order to take possession of this disc. Do you know why that would be?
I ain't got a clue. But I reckon it must be worth a fair bit of brass. He was probably gonna sell it. And you can't blame me for thinking that. Thinking ain't no crime.
My lord? Oh, here it is. The evidence your lordship requested has been located and is ready for the court's inspection, sir. The mysterious little box deposited by McGilded 2 months ago. There's no doubt in my mind that it's a key piece in this far-reaching puzzle. To be continued. Nah. Oi. There it is. The box. So this is the article in question, is it? Well, this is what, the third cliffhanger we're leaving off on? But come on. You have to admit, it's too perfect. It's too perfect a place to end things on. What a neat little bow this has been wrapped up on. Boy. This whole perjury business has me thinking. What if Ryunosuke is in fact stripped of his right to be a defense lawyer? And what if he goes back to Japan and pursues a career there? Like, he has a permit for operating in British courts of law, but that should be completely exclusive with his homeland. Who knows? Maybe the second game in this collection is primarily set in Japan. I mean, we know Herlock Sholmes has been there before, right? It was mentioned at some point that he's been to Japan. He and Iris could go over. Yeah, maybe this game will end with Ryunosuke and Herlock and Iris all boarding the ship together to go to Japan and catch up with Susato. Who knows? I do wonder about, Gina. Surely perjury is not a crime punishable by death. Like, it's surely a way lesser crime than murder, hopefully. Unless, of course, perjury is, sentencing on perjury is done by a case-by-case basis, and maybe perjury on a murder matter is really bad. But nah, I know what's gonna happen for real. Ryunosuke is gonna uncover this huge, true conspiracy, and in light of his deeds of settling this international conflict that's been brewing in the background, the judge will be lenient and just let Ryunosuke and Gina go with a little slap on the wrist. Maybe some community service. Maybe. Oh. As for other predictions, I'm predicting that this box will be completely empty. But that's going to be really, really good because it'll prove that someone took something out of it. I mean, unless Ashley was shot and interrupted before he could finish getting his mitts on that box, but I don't know. The box, the resting place, the shelf that the box was on, it felt like quite a far ways away from like the front door near the calendar where his blood splattered. I don't know. But it feels... I will say that it feels like, at long last, it feels like we're actually taking really huge strides. In this case. We're getting somewhere. I feel like we're about to go just around the bend, and from there, we'll start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of this case. We're nearly there. And honestly, I think whatever's in this box will be that corner-turning moment. And I have one more thing to think about. Gregson. I know he's been secretive thus far, but sure, it's very sensitive information, top brass sort of stuff, top brass only, directly delegated from the Lord Chief Justice. But boy, the way he's talking with Ashley, who's supposed to be just some random citizen, just some communications officer at some, well, admittedly important office, but still. I hope Gregson isn't colluding with Graydon. The scary thing is I feel like that's a possibility. I hope it's not true. I just have a little hunch. Oh man, like if that's true, what does it mean that Gregson was the one who showed up to take that disc from Ashley? What does it mean? I suppose there's only one way to find out, so we'll have to wait until next time. I'm Zephyr the Jester. This has been more The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you next time. So until then, please take care.